Imagine you are writing a final text message, a desperate plea for help. You type it out, your hands shaking, but before you can hit send, the signal dies, and it never comes back. In 1950, archaeologists digging in the ruins of Ugarit, a wealthy, ancient city in what is now Syria, found something that sent chills down their spines. They discovered a clay tablet still resting inside a kiln. It had been placed there to bake, to harden, so it could be sent to a neighboring king. The message on the tablet read,
"My father, behold, the enemy's ships came. My cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. Does not my father know that all my troops and chariots are away? The country is abandoned to itself."
The scribe who wrote that never took the tablet out of the oven. Before the clay could dry, the enemy breached the walls. The city was burned to the ground. The people were slaughtered or vanished. But Ugarit wasn't alone. In the year 1177 BC, humanity was thriving. We had international trade, diplomatic treaties, and massive architecture. It was a global economy, not so different from our own. And then, in the blink of an eye, the lights went out. Within a single human lifetime, every major civilization in the Mediterranean collapsed. Literacy vanished, progress stopped, and for centuries, history went dark. What could possibly destroy the entire world all at once? For decades, historians blamed a mysterious group of ghosts known only as the Sea Peoples. But the truth is much more terrifying than a simple war. This is the story of the first time the world ended. To understand how terrifying this collapse was, you first have to understand what was lost. We tend to think of the ancient past as primitive, isolated tribes sticking to their own territories. But the late Bronze Age was nothing like that. It was surprisingly similar to today. By the 12th century BC, the Mediterranean was ruled by a club of great powers. You had the Egyptians in the south, the Hittites in the north, the Mycenaeans in Greece, and the Babylonians in the east. These weren't enemies constantly at war. They were business partners. We have found letters sent between the Pharaoh of Egypt and the king of the Hittites where they actually address each other as brother. They exchanged doctors, sculptors, and musicians. They even had marriage treaties. But more importantly, they were addicted to trade. To make bronze, the technology that powered their entire world, you need two things: copper and tin. Copper was easy to find, mostly on the island of Cyprus. But tin was rare. It had to be shipped thousands of miles, all the way from modern-day Afghanistan. This created a massive, fragile supply chain. The Mycenaeans needed the Hittites needed the Egyptians, and everyone needed the trade ships to keep moving. It was a golden age of globalization. Wealth was exploding. Art was flourishing. It felt permanent. And then, virtually overnight, the map turned red. Historians pinpoint the year 1177 BC as the tipping point. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a massacre. In Greece, the great palaces of Pylos and Mycenae were burned so thoroughly that the stone vitrified. It turned into glass from the heat. In Turkey, the mighty Hittite capital of Hattusa was sacked and abandoned. In the Levant, city after city was leveled to the ground. Within just a few decades, the club of great powers was dead. The trade routes went silent, and the survivors were left in a world of ash, wondering who or what had come for them. When the smoke finally cleared, the survivors didn't blame the economy. They didn't blame the weather. They pointed their shaking fingers at a single, terrifying enemy. The Egyptians were the only ones strong enough to fight them off and live to tell the tale. On the walls of his great temple at Medinet Habu, Pharaoh Ramses III carved a record of the invasion. He described a confederation of warriors who came from nowhere, sweeping across the Mediterranean like a plague. He wrote, "The foreign countries made a conspiracy in their islands. No land could stand before their arms. They were coming forward toward Egypt, while the flame was prepared before them." Historians call them the Sea Peoples. But to the ancients, they were a nightmare. They didn't look like normal armies. Egyptian carvings show them wearing strange horned helmets and feathered headdresses. They carried round shields and long straight swords. And they didn't just come by ship, they came by land, moving in massive ox carts, bringing their women and children with them. They were a swarm, and everywhere they went, they erased civilization. The Hittite Empire, gone. The Mycenaeans, vanished. The great city of Troy, buried. For over a century, the accepted history was simple. The Sea Peoples were ancient Vikings, a barbaric horde that just wanted to watch the world burn. But there is a problem with that story. How could a ragtag group of pirates destroy the most advanced, fortified, and wealthy empires on Earth, all at the same time? It's like saying a biker gang took down the entire United States military. It doesn't make sense. And when modern science started digging into the dirt, they found something that changed everything. The Sea Peoples weren't the killers, they were the victims. So, if the Sea Peoples didn't kill the world, who did? For decades, we had no idea. We only had the stories of the survivors. But recently, scientists decided to stop listening to the historians and start listening to the Earth itself. In 2013, a team of researchers drilled deep into the mud of an ancient dried-up lagoon in Syria. They were looking for pollen grains, tiny, fossilized fingerprints of the ancient climate. What they found was terrifying. Right around the year 1177 BC, the pollen vanished. The data revealed a mega drought, a climate shift so severe that it lasted for 300 years. The breadbaskets of the world turned into dust bowls. The rain simply stopped coming. But the Earth wasn't done yet. Geologists began looking at the fault lines around the Mediterranean. They found evidence of something called an earthquake storm. This isn't just one quake, it's a chain reaction. One fault slips, triggering the next and the next. Between 1225 and 1175 BC, nearly every major city in the region was hit by a massive seismic event. Imagine the situation. You are the king of the Hittites. Your crops have failed for 10 years straight. Your people are starving. And then, the ground beneath your feet splits open and destroys your walls. This is where the mystery of the Sea Peoples finally makes sense. Remember those Egyptian carvings? The ones showing the invaders? If you look closely, you'll see something the ancient propaganda tried to hide. The Sea Peoples didn't just have swords and shields. They had ox carts. And inside those carts were women, children, and household goods. You don't bring your family to an invasion. You bring your family to an evacuation. The Sea Peoples weren't a conquering army. They were climate refugees. They were desperate families fleeing their own dying lands, looking for food. But because the world was so interconnected, because of that global economy we talked about earlier, the system couldn't handle the shock. When the famine hit, the trade routes collapsed. When the trade routes collapsed, the bronze supply vanished. When the bronze vanished, the governments fell. It wasn't a murder, it was a domino effect. So why does this matter? Why should you care about a collapse that happened 3,000 years ago? Because they were us. They had global trade, they had diplomatic treaties, they had advanced technology. They thought they were too big to fail. But complexity is a double-edged sword. It makes a civilization powerful, but it also makes it fragile. When you rely on copper from Cyprus and tin from Afghanistan just to keep the lights on, one broken link can crash the whole system. We live in a world that is infinitely more complex than theirs. Our supply chains wrap around the globe. Our climate is changing, and our geopolitical tensions are rising. The late Bronze Age collapse teaches us one terrifying lesson. Civilization isn't a permanent state, it's a balancing act. And history shows that gravity always wins eventually.
If you want more videos like this, subscribe. And if this one made you think, hit like so I know to make more.